Swati is the celestial architect of independence. It's the wind that bends the young sprout, teaching us that true resilience means yielding without breaking. Today, we are exploring the earthly and psychological manifestation of this powerful force.
It's the ultimate paradox of strength through flexibility. And what better place to explore that than right here, where we can just slow down and really take our time to understand it.
Welcome back to Cafe Karma, everyone. Go ahead and grab a seat at our table.
Make yourself comfortable.
Listen to the quiet clinking of silver spoons against porcelain. Breathe in that rich aroma of roasted beans.
I've got a warm melange right here in front of me, and the vibe today is just incredibly gemütlich.
It really is.
It's the perfect, cozy atmosphere to really sit back, reflect, and, absorb something profound. There's absolutely no rush today.
No rush at all. We are going to carefully sift through a comprehensive stack of astrological sources to understand exactly how the Vedic Nakshatra of Swati influences your personality, your career, and even your physical health.
Right, on a very grounded, earthly level. Exactly. We want to give you a roadmap for this specific energy.
So settle in. We are diving straight into the psychological manifestation of Swati. To understand the psychology of this star, the sources point to its animal symbol, the male buffalo.
Yeah.
Now, I love this imagery because it feels so distinct from the delicate sprout blowing in the wind that we often hear associated with this placement.
It does seem like a stark contrast at first, but it perfectly captures the internal reality of a Swati native. Psychologically, the buffalo represents a very specific, quiet brand of stubborn optimism.
Because they're such independent creatures.
Right. You see, buffaloes possess this heavy, almost immovable mass. They graze peacefully, they mind their own business. But when they decide to move, they generate an unstoppable momentum that very few things in nature can halt.
Let's think about it with an everyday analogy to really visualize how this plays out in a person's life. Imagine you are a highly focused hiker walking through a dense forest. You have a clear destination in mind. As you're walking, a thorny branch swings back and hits your arm. A normal, reactive person might stop, get angry, maybe try to break the branch.
Or complain about the scratch.
Exactly. Losing their forward momentum completely in the process.
Because a lot of energy gets wasted on the impediment itself. The reactive person makes that branch the center of their universe for that moment.
But the focused hiker, the buffalo, they don't stop to fight the branch. They just brush it off, think to themselves, past chin, it's fine, it doesn't matter, let it go, and they just keep walking.
They simply absorb the minor friction.
Because the destination is far more important than the temporary annoyance. They maintain their forward progress without needing to destroy the obstacle.
That captures the essence beautifully. They don't engage in destructive, head-on conflict with every single hurdle. They possess this unseen momentum. But this intense drive for forward movement comes with a deep psychological paradox documented in the texts.
Right.
Our sources call it divine discontent.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is this divine discontent?
Well, the primary earthly motivation of Swati is a concept called artha, which translates to material prosperity, tangible meaning, and wealth accumulation. These individuals are deeply driven to succeed in the material world.
Oh.
However, no amount of worldly success, wealth, or status ever fully satisfies their restless inner wind. They are essentially materialists seeking a spiritual exit.
Wow. Materialists seeking a spiritual exit.
Yeah.
So they accumulate the wealth, they get the corner office, they build a perfect portfolio.
Yeah.
But that inner wind is still howling, telling them there has to be something more to existence than just the material layer.
It is a perpetual state of restlessness. They achieve the goal, they reach the summit of whatever mountain they were climbing, but the contentment is fleeting.
Because their soul is ultimately looking for total liberation.
Exactly, not just luxury. So the wind pushes them to look beyond the wealth they just spent years building.
To understand how this wind operates on a more granular level, our sources break down Swati's 13-degree and 20-minute arc in the sky into 4 distinct quarters.
Which are known as padas.
Right. This is where we see the fine structure of the star and how a single constellation can produce very different types of people.
The underlying foundation of this airy wind changes significantly depending on which of these 4 padas a person's planets fall into. To understand this, we look at the Navamsa, which is essentially the underlying soul-level chart in Vedic astrology.
The transition through these 4 quarters represents a fascinating developmental journey of the soul's independence. Let's walk through them because this is where the nuance really shines.
Sure.
Pada 1 falls into the Aries Navamsa, which is ruled by Mars. The sources call this the bold trailblazer.
This is the absolute most aggressive expression of Swati's independence. Because of the fiery Martian influence, the wind here isn't a gentle breeze.
It's a storm.
It is a gale force storm. It's defined by pioneering energy, bold initiative, and a very strong drive for self-employment. They scatter obstacles through pure, unadulterated force.
I can picture someone with this placement launching a startup, burning the ships behind them, and relentlessly pushing forward.
Absolutely.
But maybe they struggle to stick around for the boring maintenance phase once the company is built.
That is highly likely. The wind wants to keep moving. But then the energy shifts dramatically in Pada 2, falling into Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. This is the grounded materialist.
So what changes here?
What's fascinating here is that this is the only quarter where the restless wind finally finds a solid, reliable container. Taurus is an earth sign, so the wind grounds itself in tangible reality.
The focus shifts heavily toward material stability, sharp business acumen, and what the texts call artistic persistence.
Right.
So instead of a gale force storm blowing everything around, the winds is harnessed. It's turning a windmill. It's highly productive for generating lasting wealth and creating things of beauty.
A very productive energy.
Then we move on to Pada 3, entering Gemini, ruled by Mercury. This one is known as the versatile communicator.
Here, the energy becomes incredibly intellectual and highly social. Gemini brings flexibility to the mind.
So they use that wind to spread ideas.
Exactly. These individuals are the clever bridge builders of knowledge. They use their communicative abilities to connect disparate ideas and people, utilizing the wind to spread information far and wide, much like a broadcaster or a brilliant networker.
And finally, Pada 4 moves into Cancer, ruled by the moon, the empathetic nurturer.
This is a
Deepest debilitation. That sounds terrible on paper. Like the ego is completely stripped of its power and confidence.
The sources do describe it as an ego devastation, but more accurately, it is a necessary systemic redirection. If the personal ego is too inflated, it will collapse here.
Because the wind of Swati cannot support centralized dictatorial power.
Precisely. But if that personal ego is dismantled early on, it can be redirected towards something much larger than the individual. The text uses Bill Gates as a prime example of this phenomenon.
That is a fascinating example. So his debilitated son in Swati meant his life wasn't about him being a shining, charismatic king on a throne.
No, not at all.
His personal ego was redirected toward building massive, decentralized global business systems like Microsoft and eventually profound social reform and philanthropy.
The personal ego has to die so the broader system can thrive. Now contrast that with Saturn. Saturn is the exact opposite. Saturn is exalted here. It reaches its absolute highest power and effectiveness in Swati.
Wait, I need to challenge that because it feels a little counterintuitive.
Go ahead.
Swati is all about wind, freedom, movement, and independence. But Saturn is the planet of restriction, discipline, delay, and long-term structure. How can the planet of boundaries be exalted in the star of boundless wind?
It does seem contradictory at first glance. But consider the nature of wind. True independence, the kind that lasts and actually builds a legacy, requires intense discipline.
I see.
Without Saturn's rigid structure, the wind of Swati just scatters everything into chaos. You get a million ideas and zero execution.
So Saturn provides the necessary endurance.
Yes, the container and the boundary so that the natives' independence actually results in a tangible empire rather than just blowing away into nothingness.
That makes a lot of sense. The kite needs the string to fly high, otherwise it just crashes. And then we have a moon in Swati, which governs the emotional mind and our inner comfort.
The moon here creates a deeply humanitarian disposition. They care about the collective. But the timing is the key detail to focus on. For these individuals, true advancement, stability, and success usually only happen after the age of 30.
Wait, age 30 is a very specific timeline. Why the delay? If they have all this airy, adaptable intelligence, shouldn't they be succeeding right out of the gate in their 20s?
There is a very specific mechanical reason for that delay in the astrological system. The typical life cycle for someone born with their moon here begins with the 18-year Rahu dasha, or major time cycle.
Rahu is the planetary ruler of Swati, right?
It is, and it brings immense volatility, restlessness, illusion, and unconventional expansion. The first couple of decades are often spent chasing mirages or experiencing sudden ups and downs.
So they are basically learning how to navigate a hurricane during their formative years.
Very much so. It isn't until they transition out of that volatile Rahu period and into the subsequent 16-year Jupiter dasha that their airy intelligence finally stabilizes.
because Jupiter brings expansive, grounding wisdom.
Exactly, allowing all their prior struggles and erratic experiences to finally bear fruit. The wind settles into a steady, purposeful current.
If you have this placement and you are in your 20s feeling like you are just spinning your wheels in the wind, patience is key. The grounding is coming.
It absolutely is.
Let's transition from the celestial mechanics to the earthly reality of daily life. How does all of this manifest in the real world for someone's career? If you have strong Swati energy, where do you naturally thrive?
Well, I'd imagine standard 9 to 5 desk jobs with rigid management would be a nightmare for them.
Oh, definitely.
Swati's energy is fundamentally tailor-made for independent, highly fluid, and market-driven landscapes. Because they are ruled by the wind, they need to be in environments where things move quickly
Where the landscape changes daily?
and where they have the autonomy to pivot without asking for permission from 10 levels of bureaucracy. Our sources specifically highlight stock markets and business as prime arenas.
It makes perfect sense when you think about it. The stock market is essentially financial wind. It shifts rapidly based on invisible forces.
Swati natives excel in speculation and trade because their airy nature allows them to process those shifts rapidly. They can move fast, adapt to changing economic winds, and identify unconventional market gaps that more rigid traditional thinkers completely miss.
They thrive in the volatility that terrifies others.
They are also highly suited for diplomacy and law. The sign of Libra, where Swati resides, represents the scales of justice, harmony, and balance.
Right.
They make incredibly effective judges, mediators, and diplomats because they can see all sides of an argument blowing in the wind. However, our sources offer a very stern caveat here regarding their legal and diplomatic pursuits.
I assume that connects back to the Rahu influence. Rahu wants to expand and win at any cost, sometimes blurring ethical lines. So they can't just rely on their superficial charm, wit, and smooth talking to get by in the legal world.
Exactly. Without the right stabilizing planetary aspects like a strong, ethical Jupiter, there is a structural risk that they use their legal charm and high-level intelligence simply to become highly paid puppets for the elite.
That's a trap.
It is. They must actively strive to be ethical reformers. They must consciously choose genuine justice over mere influence and financial gain.
A very thin line to walk between true independence and just serving the highest bidder. And the third major career field mentioned in the text is yoga and pranayama.
Which is fascinating as a contrast to the high-stakes business and legal worlds.
Very different energy.
It connects directly back to the presiding deity of the Nakshatra, Vayu. Vayu governs the atmospheric wind, but more internally, Vayu governs the life breath, the prana.
Because of this deep intrinsic connection to the element of air, Swati natives have a natural, almost instinctual mastery over breath control and holistic healing. They deeply understand how the flow of energy works in the body.
They do.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because that connection to the breath leads us perfectly into the somatic blueprint. How does this wind energy actually manifest in the physical body? What are the health vulnerabilities?
In medical astrology, Swati is completely dominated by the Vata dosha. Vata is the Ayurvedic humor associated with air and space.
It governs all movement in the body, right?
Yes, blood circulation, nerve impulses, the blinking of the eyes, and most importantly, the breath itself.
Let's use another everyday analogy to really picture how Vata works in the body, especially when it goes wrong. Imagine an old wooden house sitting on top of a hill, and there's a very strong, constant draft of wind blowing through it.
Okay.
If all the interior doors and windows are open, the wind just flows smoothly through the house. It's drafty, sure, but the structure of the house is perfectly fine.
The energy is moving as it should. There is no resistance.
But if a heavy door suddenly slams shut, that strong wind gets trapped in the hallway. The pressure immediately starts to build up against the walls.
The windows start to rattle violently.
And eventually, that trapped, pressurized wind is going to cause structural damage to the house. The hinges will break, the plaster will crack.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the human body, that is exactly what happens to a Swati native when their internal wind, their Vata, gets disturbed.
When the air cannot flow freely through the physical channels.
It gets trapped, leading to very specific physical vulnerabilities documented in our sources. The texts frequently mention issues with something called disturbed apanavayu.
What exactly is apanavayu in this context?
Apanavayu is the downward and outward moving air in the body responsible for elimination and reproduction. When that downward pressure gets blocked or mismanaged, like the slammed door in your analogy, it leads to physical ailments like hernias.
Because the trapped wind literally pushes against the structural walls of the abdomen.
Exactly. They are also highly prone to chest problems, severe intestinal gas, and issues with the kidneys and urinary tract.
Which relates directly back to Libra's governance of the body's fluid balance and filtration.
Right.
The sources also list eczema as a primary vulnerability, which is so interesting to me, a skin condition caused by wind.
In the ancient Ayurvedic framework, yes, eczema, psoriasis, and certain dry rashes are seen as manifestations of ungrounded, aggravated Vata in the blood and skin tissues.
It is that restless, dry, airy energy pushing out to the surface of the body because it isn't circulating properly within.
Precisely.
Given all these specific vulnerabilities, what is the most effective remedy for them?
The remedy brings us right back to their natural career affinities, pranayama or breathwork.
For a Swati native, conscious breathing exercises are not just a trendy wellness hobby to do on a Sunday morning.
They are a strict medical necessity. They have to actively, daily regulate those internal winds to prevent that pressure buildup. They must keep the doors of the house open.
Regulate the breath, regulate the body. It is a beautiful, self-contained system. Now, looking at this massive stack of research we've pulled from today, the classical texts, the mythology, the medical correlations, it is incredibly thorough. But I have to ask, as someone looking at this from a modern perspective, what might be missing from our sources? Where are the blind spots?
This raises an important question about the evolution of astrological research. The ancient texts are meticulous. They perfectly document the mythological deities like Vayu, the spiritual remedies, the psychological archetypes of the buffalo.
And the baseline medical correlations of Vata and prana.
Right. But they were written thousands of years ago in a vastly different world.
So the core archetypes are there, but the modern application might be lagging behind in the literature.
There is a noticeable gap in modern astrological research regarding how Swati's core power, which is called Kardvamsa Shakti, the power to scatter and disperse, translates into highly digitized 21st century professions.
Scattering information today looks very different than it did in an agrarian society.
Exactly. How does the power to scatter translate into algorithmic stock trading, where millions of data points are dispersed and analyzed in milliseconds?
Or how does it apply to modern psychological therapies like EMDR, which literally scatter and reprocess localized trauma in the brain?
The ancient principles of the wind are undeniably solid, but the modern high-tech application of this specific nakshatra is a wide-open field waiting for more rigorous documentation from today's astrologers.
A great reminder that this knowledge is alive and still evolving. It isn't just static history. So, to bring it all back to you, the listener, Swati is about mastering the balance of the wind.
It is about honoring the stubborn, quiet optimism of the buffalo within you.
The part of you that can brush off the thorny branches of life and just keep walking towards your goal.
But equally, it is about embracing the adaptability of the young sprout. Knowing when to yield and bend to the winds of change so that your structure, your ego, doesn't snap under the intense pressure of life.
It is a delicate dance between fierce autonomy and graceful harmony. And as we wrap up our time here today, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought drawn from an esoteric detail in our texts.
Swati represents the exact midpoint of the zodiac.
It sits precisely in the middle. It is the equilibrium between expansion and contraction.
It is the moment the universe pauses, takes a breath, before changing direction.
So what does this all mean for your journey? I ask you. If you have this Pradvamsa Shakti, this incredible ancient power to scatter negativity like the wind, how are you using it today?
Are you consciously using it to clear away the genuine obstacles in your life to create room for real growth?
Or are you just unconsciously blowing away everything and everyone that ties you down simply to feel a fleeting, temporary sense of being free?
A profoundly important distinction to reflect on. Freedom without purpose is just being lost in the breeze.
Something to mull over as you finish the last sip of your coffee. Thank you for joining us here at Cafe Karma for this deep dive. Take that stubborn optimism with you this week. Until next time, keep observing, keep questioning, and keep exploring.